Welcome to a special episode of Ground Up Growth. Today we're looking back at some of the standout conversations from our top episodes of 2025. If you've enjoyed the podcast this year, I ask that you don't forget to rate and review because it really helps our podcast grow. As we look ahead to the next year, I'd love to hear your guests or topic recommendations. And as always, thank you so much for your continued support. With that, let's dive into some of the top conversations from 2025.
They would give me $180,000 that I could
for you
go
to
do
use
whatever.
However, yeah.
If I want to do a renovation, I want to go buy a ski boat. Well, they don't want you to do that, but so that's what I did. And so, but it's treated as cash. So this house came up in Red Oak Plantation in 2014, and I wanted to buy it as a rental house. And it was, I ended up buying it, paid $148,000 for it.
So you pulled the money off the house you're living in. You bought it with cash, so it was paid for, but then the house you're living in.
So now I owed back on
you had a
our
loan
primary
on.
house.
Yes.
But it's a rental house, so, it's bringing in money day one. And so, one of the biggest things with this, we still own that house today. We paid $148 for it at the time. That house today is worth $290.
That's crazy.
Okay, that's been 11 years. Huge appreciation, but it's been being rented out for 11 years. Yeah. And the compounding effect of all that. And so what we did was pulled the line of credit, owed $150, got a tenant in there, $1,600 a month. At the time, it was like you could get 1% of purchase price pretty easy on rent. So we paid $148, getting $1,600. So
and again, your personality is, I can't stand owing somebody money. Yeah. So you just start putting money back on.
We're in real estate full time. Everything's growing. So we're taking every bit of money I'm making.
You're putting back
I'm
down.
literally just handing it over my back to the bank. Here. I'm literally never bought anything fun. But nobody knew what I was doing either.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. And so before you know it, I don't remember how long it took. We paid the house off, but we bought another rental, and then we bought another rental.
And it was a slow roll.
Oh, it was super slow.
But it was.
But all the while,
that was 11 years ago at this point.
The business is growing.
Yeah.
And I started, because again, I started the real estate when I'm 27, so nobody really wanted to entrust me to do big deals. But as I was getting older, and I didn't have the competition that's in real estate today. Yeah. Now everybody and their brother is a realtor. At that time, there was only a handful of young people. And so, I got in at an opportune time unknowingly and poured gas on a fire, and that allowed me to get established without a whole lot of competition. So I started picking up, all the innovative things we were doing. We were picking up listings and buyers and just, all kind of stuff. We were doing the houses and the land. And so I started doing bigger deals, where you may make $50,000 on a commission on a sale. I would take the $50,000 but at this point I had gotten addicted to investment property.
Yeah.
And the financial discipline. It was a game at this point. And so I would get excited about getting a commission check and putting it on a rental house.
And at this point we were married, but I remember you would get a $50,000 commission check, but it didn't even seem like.
You never touched it?
We never touched it. It literally went straight to pay something. It's not like we went and did something fun. I mean, no offense,
Yeah.
But.
Right. And, fast forward,
it was worth it.
We're cheap, but
now
we're at a point where we can let go and do things we want to do. And we don't have financial arguments. Whereas, sex and money has always been the two biggest things,
and when we had marriage counseling, they said money and sex were the two things that people argued about the most. And I feel like money is something we've always been on the same page with.
It's never been a burden.
Well,
and we're not saying that to be braggadocious or anything in any way.
But we grew up similar. Not the extreme, I still had working parents too, but I didn't have just silly things and, just middle-class working parents.
Well, when we got married, you had a car loan, didn't you?
Yes.
You had
my life savings when we got married which I'd been working, I don't know how many years, 5 or so, and I had maybe like $14,000 in my bank account, and that was my life savings. And the first thing you did is you took my $14,000 and you paid off my car note.
Well,
and
it blew my mind. I'm like, what are you doing with a car note and cash in the bank that was paying no interest?
I was crushed because that was everything I had worked for 5 years. Like, that was a tough pill for me to swallow.
Right. And I get that. And that's the mentality of a lot of the, just the general public.
Just holding on
savings,
so tight
like
to
a
that.
savings account, like, just squirreling that away.
So you had to kind of push me out of the comfort zone of that kind of stuff.
I looked at it as an opportunity, like kill the loan and then we can keep rolling this way. And so that's what we did. And we kept buying rental property and buying good rental property. That was a big thing that we always did. And, we've probably got 14 or 15 rental houses now. And then we moved into commercial. We've got commercial buildings, and then trying to diversify within the real estate industry as a whole. We have a pretty good bit of vacant commercial land, and then we've got a whole arm where we do, recreational land. We'll buy, develop, sell. Then we do residential development stuff where we'll buy large tracts of land and then go through the subdivision process, put in roads, run utilities, different things like that. So, we're heavily invested.
And for a long
real
time,
estate.
I did all the books for all of that stuff.
Right.
Like rental property, investment property, hopper properties.
Right.
And it wasn't until a couple years ago, or maybe even last year, that you finally put that on somebody else. I still do hopper stuff, but
right.
you finally let go a little bit and decided to pay somebody to.
I'm just, frugal, but.
But you remember, I felt like I wasn't qualified to do all that stuff. And I made the joke in front of our accountant, but I was kind of serious about sometimes I just get my debits and credits confused. And he was like, oh, and I was like, not kidding. You don't want me doing this.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad we got that off your plate.
Yeah,
so
it was a good move.
But anyway, so that we built that whole, passive income deal so that it stemmed from a cyclical industry. In the event something happened, we're prepared. Because at the end of the day, that's what I've always loved about real estate. We've got an awesome team. We've had as many as 60 agents that work at Hopper, and, recently we trimmed down and we have a really lean, mean group now, and we've actually done more production. This past year was our biggest year ever.
Yeah,
with less people. And it's just amazing the way that the roadmap goes and just how, I don't know. It's just so, it's been such a fun journey.
We come back here and our lives feel empty. And I had a corporate job at the time still. I was with a CPA firm now, marketing for them, and met with my boss, who was amazing, supportive, encouraging, all the things. And I just said, man, I can't come back. Can't do it. Yeah. And he said, well, I know you're going to have success. And I'm sorry, if I'm not going to name his name, but he'll know who he is if he hears this. But he said, I know that you're going to have success in whatever you do. That's the reason why we hired you. We know you're an amazing person. So I was so excited for his encouragement in that. But he said, this vinyl thing that you're doing is just for fun and to some degree. And so I was like, okay, that's one of those
my fuel.
Yeah, let me prove this point real fast. So,
right.
We were still selling on Etsy and then on our website, and we were selling probably $10,000 or $15,000 a month in $5 stickers. That was it.
Really?
We weren't selling vehicle wraps. We weren't selling signs. We were selling monogram logos.
I remember that because you did some custom. You could make whatever
whatever
decal you want to put on a truck that said whatever. You could.
Yeah.
You're the only man in town that could do it.
So we were doing it, shipping them all over the place. And I told Lauren, I said, we've lost our son, and the only other thing that we could lose is our marriage and our house, and we have both of those. So if you agree to let's just bear down and do this thing, let's do it.
That's what I wanted to hear, the support. And
yeah,
we bring the spouse in on every podcast. It seems like because there's such a it's so integral, and so Lauren was supportive of.
Yeah, Lauren was
the vinyl.
Was over half of the whole deal. Now she hadn't done much of any of it to this point because she's been a mom to Ryan. That was her full-time job. It was like managing the medicine, managing the process. I mean, she became an expert in cancer.
Right.
Terribly, but yes. And so she needed a purpose as well, and she didn't want to go back to a job. And so we both started this. We went and got a lease in Gluckstadt. We had a building that we rented from a guy who took a risk on us. I kind of beat him up on the price. I was like, man, I'm first time doing this. I don't really want to spend the money. I don't know if I can afford it. All the fear was coming out in me, but I was like, I had to remind myself every single day that this is a leap of faith. We got to take it. We got to try. Let's do this. So we did it.
And that space y'all leased, it was, how big was it?
1,500. Yeah, 1,500 square feet. It was a great space. He did a good build out for us. But I mean, we weren't there 6 months and we outgrew the space. Wow. We learned real fast. Internet business is great for what we were doing. But if we wanted to really build a customer base and have clients that we could work with and help them grow, like we talked about earlier, this is the only way to do that. We had to build a local base of clients that we could anchor ourselves with, help their businesses grow, and in turn we grow with them. Mm-hmm. And so we were out of space quickly. You and I, in the midst of all this, are talking business and real estate. And I can remember there's a building which we're in now, to spoil the surprise, but like we would drive past it going to your old house.
Yeah.
And it was a CrossFit gym, and I was like, I just love the layout of that building. I like the land. It's good. It looks like it would be a perfect size for what we do. And I was like, Paul, if that building ever comes for sale, let me know. I'd like to buy it.
Right.
Or I'd like to at least consider it. Right. And I don't think it was a week later you called me and you're like, you're not going to believe this, but it's for sale. And I said, well, let's figure it out. Let's do something. And we wrote up an offer and bought that building in 2017 or late 2016. I forget the exact time frame, but like all this happened within 12 months of Ryan passing away. And I mean, that was scary, but like having you to talk me through a commercial property purchase was huge. Again, like we're super good friends. We've been through a lot of life together. We grew up doing all the, similar things. And then to be able to come to you and say like, hey, I want to do this. And you just kind of laid the process out and made it something I had no clue. And still to this day, I'm kind of learning on it. But like, I don't know if you want to add anything to that whole.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I've seen you grow a lot in that real estate space. I mean, you handle all of our signs and everything. So we deal with its vinyl all the time, and they've been excellent. But, as far as your growth, it's amazing because I remember that. Like I remember going to lunch and just literally talking about the $5 decals and and then that transition to the place on Lexington Drive, and then outgrowing that, and then getting to where you are now. And now every day you go by now, you've outgrown what you've got now. And
I mean, I can remember I told somebody yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I was actually at the Hartley open house. And that's another incredible business in Gluckstadt. But somebody there was talking to me about my space and just seeing all the cars. And I said, I'm looking for another piece of property or building right now, trying to do something. And we can talk about that, what we're working on at the moment. But one of the things that you told me a couple years ago was like, I don't remember the exact words, but go until it hurts, basically. And it's like, make your building work until you just got no other choice. That's kind of what I heard from you. And I remember in the last 6 months, I sent you a video of my parking lot with standing room only, basically.
Right.
Vehicles 3 deep in the back. I mean, we got police cars and buses and 18-wheeler trailers and whatever else in there. And I was like, I think this is my sign.
Right.
Like, it's
to
time.
the gills, yeah. No, I think that's a motto I've always gone after. I mean,
what I had seen modeled at home was just get by the best you can. If you need to write a bad check, you'll make it up later. And even though I knew that wasn't right, I still just didn't have the capacity to understand.
Yeah.
You got to pay all this back.
Right.
You know, all this, there's taxes due. There's,
So it was probably more so the mindset, like we deal with this with people a lot of times, is what's my payment?
What is my payment?
I ain't worried about the interest rate, not worried about the length of the loan, not worried about what's going to happen when the loan comes due and the rate goes up or whatever. So that was your mindset?
That was my mindset, was can we budget for it?
Can I?
Does it fit into our budget?
Yes.
And it did. until '08.
Oh,
So,
yes. Tell me about '08, because I got in 2011.
yeah, so we were rolling, man. We were doing really well, and having some successes, and doing pretty well. Well enough to not realize you need to be putting something back. Mm-hmm. Not having like a slow month and going, oh man, I need to prepare for that next time. Just kind of level kill, growing every month, and going, this is always going to be here.
Comfortable.
And in '08, it went away. The subprime crashed.
That was
dude.
instant.
I always tell the story. In September of '08, I went in to the office. I was going to have my best month ever. I was closing like 10 deals that day. I was going to have a huge month. Even by today's standards, that's still a big month.
Right.
And I sat down at my computer, opened it up, and the first email I got was, we failed to inform you that ABC Lending is no longer funding loans. Any loans you have in our pipeline will not be funded today. Well, there went 2 off the board. I sat there from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock that day in a 2-hour span and watched us go from 10 loans to 1 mortgage we closed that day.
Oh my goodness.
There was a guy that started a
And you're
website.
100%, I mean, for our listeners,
100%
you're
commission.
100% commission.
100% commission.
No stipend,
That's
no
right.
salary
Nothing.
plus.
Nothing.
Eat what you kill.
Yeah, eat what you kill, and I'm paying the rent on the building. I own the business, So on top of that, on top of just my personal income, I've got all these other expenses. And there was a guy had a website built. It was called the Mortgage Implodometer, and he was tracking. He had forecasted this. He kept saying this was going to crash. This was going to crash, and nobody listened to him. He built this website, and his whole job every day was to show companies that were going out of business. And at one point, there were so many so many banks and lenders went out of business in a 24-hour period that it crashed the website.
No.
He couldn't keep up with it. And man, it was just like all of a sudden, I mean, I tell people we took an 80% pay cut overnight. I mean, and I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh man.
Yeah. And a wife that had come home from work, actually. We were doing well enough that she had come home from work to take care of the kids. And man, it was just devastating.
Gosh.
And
so you're in a valley.
we're just and it's funny, Paul, you say that. We really didn't even realize at that point how big of a valley we were in.
Yeah.
You're just like, it's like a fog. It's like
you're
can't
rolling
even
with it. But
you're just like,
don't-
well, surely it's going to change in a week or so, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. You're remaining optimistic.
Yeah. We didn't know it was going to last 2 years. Really, looking back on it, it was really 4 years. So, man, this again is part of my story. We lost everything. We lost our house, our vehicles, foreclosure, bankruptcy, the whole nine. And for a long time I was embarrassed about it and stuff like that. And I was like, man, this is my story, and if I don't tell it, I'm not being honest.
Right.
And people need to hear this.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate the vulnerability and you talking about that, because that's extremely tough. And everybody can act like they have everything together, all the time. But at the end of the day, I mean, again, this is ground up growth. You're going to go through those valleys. If you're a normal person, you're going through those things. And, that I really appreciate that, because I know that can be tough. But in the same breath, you can help the next person avoid that pothole. And back to your point, this sounds like this all stemmed from not having financial guidance from your parents
100.
or anybody in your sphere of influence at the time.
Nobody.
And had you had that, it would have probably triggered some red flags along the way, be it probably not buying the truck or the boat or whatever, or putting hay in the barn when you had a 1099 job. And man, that is, I hate that you went through that. I appreciate that you're willing to talk about it, but it can be a blessing to the next person to help somebody avoid that. And that's huge.
Well, it was funny. A few years after the bruising went away, so, a guy asked me to speak about it at a men's luncheon. I said, "Yeah, man, I'll do that." And I was so nervous, and I'm not a great speaker anyway. And I spoke and just kind of poured it out, man. Right. You got choked up a few times and things like that, and for the next 6 or 8 months, my phone rang once a week with some guy going, "Hey man, I know it's going to sound weird, but I saw you speak and could you talk to me?" Kind of going through the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was.
Wow, that's powerful.
It was powerful, man, and it plugged me into some guys that I've stayed in touch with since, and I think just being, like you said, being vulnerable and not being able to, not being scared to just say, "Man, I failed.
Yeah.
I fell on my face, but I got up."
Right.
You know.
No, that is it is part of more people's story. I mean, that's, we've talked about, people have asked me when I'm going to tell my story, but I have failures in my story too, and that's just part of it.
Well, I hope this make you feel okay with telling them, because I mean, people need to hear it. They need to know that it's all right. You're going to fall.
100%.
If you're not, you're not trying.
Yeah.
So from there, man, stayed in the business kind of indirectly. Helped a guy wind down some rental properties. Actually helped a bankruptcy court wind down a Ponzi scheme type thing that they had found, and it was a guy owned a bunch of houses, and I helped them work through that. And knew I eventually wanted to be back in lending, and man, I would never forget. And I owe so much to my wife for this, but I remember these companies would call me from the automotive manufacturing industry, because I had a pretty good reputation in that business, and they say, "Hey man, I heard you fell on hard times, man. We got a job for you." I was like, "Man, I'm not going back to that." And I remember sitting with Candy and just going, "Hey, if we can just hold on, I can do this. I can be more than just good at this."
Right.
And man, she kept believing in me, or either she acted like she did.
That's huge, man. That is,
dude. If you don't have somebody in your corner, golly, to come along beside you, it's tough.
So the whole draft process was very intense, if you would. It was, you never want to make the wrong decision. There's probably kids out there right now that are going through the same thing. You don't know whether you're going to go to school or you're going to go and say, "Hey, I'm going to take this leap of faith and dump school and say, hey, I'm going to go try it out and see if I can make it to the big leagues," because the minor league pay is not exactly great. But, a lot of prayer through that process, a lot of family, a lot of trying to just ask for insight on things. And, and ultimately I think God was there with us and just kind of guided that path through that process, because it was a very difficult process. How young I was and immature, and 18, 19, 21 years old. You just don't really have grasp on life yet and what that is. A lot of fears. And, to get that call is just it's an overwhelming feeling, because I have played baseball since I was 5 years old, and I put so much time. I didn't have spring breaks. I didn't have summers. I didn't do all these things that other normal kids do, So to get that call is just super special. And how it happened was kind of crazy. I was in AAA, 24 years old, get a call at 12 at night after a game. So I'm in the bed about to go to sleep, and my manager calls me and just says, "Hey, they have an injury up top. Congratulations, you're going to the big leagues, but you have a flight at 4 a.m. in the morning to go to Los Angeles. They have a day game the next day." So I'm in New York. They say, "Hey, you got a day game the next day at 12 o'clock in Los Angeles." So I get that call. I say, "Okay, whatever I have to do, I'll do it." Right. So go to the airport, didn't sleep a wink. I don't like to fly anyway. So I get on the flight. It's a 6-hour flight or 5-hour flight. And I'm just watching a movie the whole time, wide-eyed, and didn't go to sleep. But I'm thinking to myself, surely I'm not starting. I'm not playing.
Right.
Walk into the locker room, and I have, 4 bags on my back, and I get into the Dodgers visiting locker room, and Jason Worth passes me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I think you're in there today. I got a migraine." And
goodness.
He's basically not playing, telling me that I'm going to start. I walk up.
What position? You're first base?
So I'm first base outfield, but I had only played a few games in the outfield thus far. So I've always played first base or in the infield somewhere. And I walk into the locker room, I look at the lineup card an hour before the game, and it says, Tyler Moore's batting 7th, playing left field.
Oh,
and I about have a stroke, And so I don't know if you've been to Dodger Stadium, but it's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest stadiums there. There's probably 30 to 40,000 people there at that day game. Just overwhelming. I came from, playing in front of
2,000 people the night before to here we are, 40,000. Like, you made it to the show, my man. Here
And
we
you're
go.
playing. I mean, but you're not routinely practicing left field stuff.
No, I mean, I'm trying, but at the
obviously you
same
know how to
time,
catch
you're
the
like,
ball,
this
but-
is not going to happen. You know, you're not going to be in, but here we are. It's kind of like being prepared. You know, I should have took it
put up
more
or shut
seriously.
up.
Yeah, that's right. And so, anyways, long story short, get to play the game. Went 1 for 3 in the game. We lost, which isn't great, but played left field, caught a pop fly. Shortly right after that, we jump on the plane on the bird and head all the way back over to DC. So,
So you're in now.
Oh yeah,
They just
I mean,
threw you to the wolves.
Yeah. So, but maybe that was the best thing. But playing a pro game with zero amount of sleep is a different deal.
Wow. Is there anything lessons that some of those guys helped you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, there's such a difference when you're a rookie coming in to a big league locker room, like you just said. There's guys that are, you know, making $15 million a paycheck. You know, and it's eye opening. It just really is. I mean, my first paycheck when I got there was, you know, the first month's salary was a little over $50,000, and I didn't come from a lot of money. My parents gave me everything I needed. Never was in need, but that was just a lot of money for me, you know, at the time. Right. And it was almost, you know, scary at the time. You didn't want to lose it. You know, you didn't know what to do with it. Right. And but there was guys walking around that locker room that could just cash that check for me right then. You know, because they just have a lot of money. It's just nothing to them. They just are playing this game, a kid's game, and they're just very good at it. I think with money, the more money you get, you just become more the person you already are. So if you like to boast and like to show off already with no money, then you start getting some money, it's going 10x. It's going 10x. But if you like to, you know, if you like to give, if you like to, you know, be more frugal, invest, you know, I think it's going to 10x too. You're going to start learning that, and you're going to start diving into that and figuring out, you know, what the best play is there, you know. And he was one of those guys that was a very good giver. You know, he was a Christian, and you could tell by his fruits, you know, all the time on a daily basis, you know. And he would say, man, it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much land you have, all that, you're always going to want more. You're always going to want more. You need to start trying to be, you know, content in the spot that you're in, wherever you're at.
That is powerful.
It is. You have to be able to, you want to be able to solve big problems for people and help them out and get them started. And at the end of the day, I'm nobody's boss, but you want to be able to motivate people to, you know, really fill out their potential in this business. So, I mean, that's why it's so important for us to continue to grow, because I feel like, you know, Jim Rohn always said this. He would say, you know, if your personal development does not match your income, it's going to start to level out. So say that somebody's income is way up here, but they're not good with people or don't know how to do business. Yeah. It's eventually going to level itself back out.
Because that's so uncool.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like, very unsexy.
Yes, it's like buying a yacht or buying a motorcycle. Like, that's where I feel like the general population gravitates, because in their mind, they've earned it. I've worked my tail off. I've done this for X amount of years. I deserve something fun, and a rental house does not check that box. Now, I'm a huge fan of rental property. I love it. I'm very involved in it, but I'm so interested to know what triggered you to be like, yeah, let me go get a rental house so I can get those calls.
I think just the money was starting to come in, obviously, and I like the aspect of having a asset I could put my hands on. You know, I could go drive over there and say, hey, this is fine.
Yeah, ain't
you
going
know?
nowhere. Right.
So, and I think that resonates with a lot of people. I think, you know, we've always talked about retirement. Right. Like that, the golden day of retirement. I don't think me and you will ever retire, but I think the more time freedom we can have back, I don't care about really the most money you have. It's just what kind of freedom are you going to have to be able to say,
like the way that you have presented humbleness, I appreciate, because I've learned a lot from you. You've humbled me on a ping pong table more than I care to admit. But I just think that's, yes, to continue to be vulnerable, want to learn, want to grow. That's just, man, if you're not doing that,
because nobody cares.
No.
By him telling me that there was another way, it really sparked an idea, and I came back home and I started thinking about, what that looked like. And I do recall in 2013 where I couldn't answer the phone and be in front of customers. So we did let Stephen's mom, Miss Wanda, answer the phones during that time. I do recall in 2014 to where I couldn't run 3 crews and get in front of the customers as well as I could. So my very first hire was Jeff Thomas, and he supervised the jobs, managed the jobs while I sold, and we did have Stephen and our other guy help us during that time frame too. And then I remember 14, 15 hiring somebody full time after the hailstorm happened to answer my phones, and I do remember hiring a bookkeeper, somebody to keep the books, and then I remember hiring my first salesperson in 2016. So leading up to all this, I was the main salesperson. But 2016, I hired my first salesperson. I was scared to death. Trained him for literally 4 months, Paul. 4 months. That's how crazy I was, because I just wanted to know for sure that he could represent it the way. And now reading the 80-20 rule, knowing that he didn't really have to do it just like me, only 80%. But I was that crazy. I was just so concerned about every single little aspect of the company.
1-0 crap erases 100 attaboys, and that's something that's always stuck in my head too. It's like when you spend your whole life, or the majority of your adult life, growing. I mean, that's your baby.
Oh, and man, that's like a kid.
And it's like you've got to constantly pet and groom that thing, or it's.
And if you're a control freak like me, I mean, you don't, and there were times where I was like, man, I don't, I could see maybe I felt less than having somebody help me, because knowing my dad supported a family of 4 on his back, like,
that's right.
This is going to be a 1-man show or 2-man show. But at that time, it felt like more like 1 man, because, they were doing the used cars and big construction stuff, and I felt kind of alone on an island figuring things out. But so fast forward, I hired a salesman. We had another storm in 16 where I hired 3 different State Farm adjusters that I had befriended through just working out in the field with, try to capitalize on a storm in my hometown in Byron, Mississippi. So I went from 1 salesperson to 4 real quick. Started building out a team.
Is that salary based or is that commission based?
That was the first time. Well, I can't say that's the first time, because on the first rep, I paid by commission too. But the structure that we started with has changed. We were paying more on profit. Now we're paying gross.
That commission gives you breathing room, because obviously that's what we do with our agents. And it helps me sleep at night, because at the end of the day, I'm not paying you unless you bring something in.
That's right.
So,
and they also have an unlimited earning potential too, and that's very appealing to a salesperson.
They can make as much as they want, and if you want to go hibernate, hibernate.
Yeah, I get it. And but going back to the story, 2016, that's really the first time things started scaling. Where I started hiring, where there was pain points, bottlenecks, and about that time, because it got serious. I mean, we were probably doing 3-4 million or so at that point, and that's when me and my wife kind of had a conversation, and leading up to this, it was a handshake, and it's time to get something in writing.
Right.
Yeah. So, had a conversation with Stephen. He was up for it. Reached out to a best friend of mine that was an attorney. Got our first agreement in play where I'd be 50-50 owner. And there was a gradual buy down over 10 years to where after 10 years I would own 75% and he would still retain 25%. And at that time, man, talk about a happy dude. Man, I was so happy that, that monkey was on my back, that all that work that I'd put in meant something, and I actually had legal ownership of the company. But another thing that helped with is just confidence. That, oh man, this is really half mine now, and it really poured gas on the whole situation. So kind of go from 16 to 18. We grew another few million. So we're around 6.5 million in revenue around 2018. And had an opportunity to grow again in Hattiesburg, another relationship that was built with an insurance adjuster. And his hometown, he was just here briefly for a storm, but he was going back to his hometown in Hattiesburg. And just, we really, made a connection and said, hey man, I want to bring Watkins to Hattiesburg. And, just 2 years prior, I just had a huge win getting ownership. So it's kind of scratching my head. How does this work? Because as much as I appreciated that first deal, I didn't really know if it would be fitting for this new opportunity to be under those circumstances. So,
right. And you're going to have to even let go even more.
Yeah.
Because, you don't live in Hattiesburg.
That's right. That's right. So I'd had to put my trust in him too, to be able to replicate what we have done, extend that brand down there. But racked my brain on how I could do that. Thought about franchising, thought about a few other creative ways. But at the end of the day, through conversations with mentors in the industry, people that I, really respected, they kind of encouraged me to kind of go back to the table and see if there's an opportunity to, buy the Watkins out, or, them buy me out and me kind of go out on my own, or just take it to the court and dissolve it and split the proceeds. So that was, and I didn't get into this in our podcast where I told the story, and I don't like really telling it with this much detail because I don't ever want to disrespect anybody that was involved. Like, I love the Watkins family. I'm so appreciative of the opportunity that they gave me coming up. But,
right.
At this point, it's just like, man, this might need to happen. Right. So it was probably the most difficult conversation I've ever had in my life, going to Stephen and talking with him about this, opportunity. But I did it. We were able to come up with an agreement. And, in 2018, I became sole owner of Watkins Construction. And, man, talk about confidence again. Super thankful, super proud. We had done a good job of scaling to that point, but, that really gave me, more ammunition to grow even more. So, where we were sharing a location on Highway 80, we bought our first building in a high street.
Yeah. What was your thought process behind that? This is not a complete real estate podcast, but I would love to, where we can, inject real estate topics and different things, just because every industry, whether you own a building or you lease a building, real estate is a component of every business. So I would love to.
You already know the answer.
It's so little. It's just a little bit of time that you gave, but it leaves such a mark with somebody. And an employee, they'll do anything for you after that. You got them for life.
Man, that's a really good point. That's I agree 100%. And we talk about this all the time, but time is your biggest commodity that we have. Yes. And the fact that you're willing to sacrifice your time for your employees or people that mean the most to you, that goes such a long way. In the moment, to your point, in the moment, it doesn't feel like.
No, I was 19 years old.
And you're not doing it for the ROI of, having an employee for life. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's very inspiring that at that age, at 19, working in a warehouse, that you had the mentality to be a sponge and just take in all the different interactions between different facets of the company, and then just the way people treated people. That's to be a sponge and then log that and then say, hey, I'm going to use this in the future. That's,
and I didn't know at the time that I was going to
growth,
use it. It was just what was going on around me and being observant to what's going on. And then looking back on it later in life, whenever I became to have a position of, authority or management, and, well, how can I get this employee to do what I wanted to do?
Right. You go draw from the well from when you were at Muscatelli's. Yes. I've
been in situations where the person managing me was, the hand on the fist, hand on the desk, just yelling. And, it's like, is that really the most effective way?
Right.
I knew that I didn't want to do it like that, but people do it like that, and some people are very effective. And it just depends on, I guess, your audience or whatever. You can also run off good help doing stuff like that.
For sure, absolutely. That's awesome.
To get back to the track, we got to the second store was in Raleigh, Mississippi, and bought that in 2008. And at that point, my dad was still managing the grocery store in Mendenhall. And that's whenever they said, okay, this is probably going to be the line. This is the conflict.
So the first store in New Hebron, you left, went to Muskelly's. Did he just hire a general manager to fill that role while he couldn't be there? And then he still probably went at night.
And, she did a decent job and everything. And it was just enough to where he would be there in the morning. He could check up, leave them a list. He'd be back there in the afternoon to close it down. So he did that for what felt like years.
So he bought in Raleigh.
Raleigh was store 2.
And did you come back in the game before or after the second purchase?
So I came back. He had purchased Raleigh in 2008, and I believe I transferred to Southern. It must have been in 2008 in the fall. And I started going to school 2 days a week and working for him 5 days a week, basically running the store in New Hebron so that he could focus on the one in Raleigh. He also recruited someone that worked with him in Mendenhall to work for him, and really that became like our first supervisor. And he also went to school at Southern with me and lived in Hattiesburg, and one went one way and one went the other. And we were young and, working, going to school, and it was can to cane every day, it felt like.
Wow.
But when he bought the second store, that's really whenever the owner came to my dad and said, all right, this is probably the line. And it's like, today's going to be your last day. And
on the spot.
And my dad called me. He's like, it's about to get real, and just, he was so concerned because he had a W-2 job that paid for everything. And so whatever the company made, leaving the company, keep reinvesting in the company, and, upgrade the POS system, upgrade equipment. You can pay, higher wages to recruit better people and offer benefits and so on and so forth. So now it's like, well, my W-2 job's gone.
Right.
And now I have to take all my money out of the company to make a living.
Right.
And I think that scared him. But I was in New Hebron when he called me and told me, like, I think I called him for a problem. And he said, I can't talk to you right now. And I was like, something going on? He said, yes. I'm being let go right now. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, this is great. And I'm thinking, like, now we can focus on this. He said, this is not great. I'll call you later.
No, not great.
And it was, I just remember walking around all day thinking, like, this is going to be good. This is great. And, he called me at dark or whatever, and you could just tell, like, he'd been on it all day and just completely stressed out. Like, his life was about to change.
Right.
But, we, dove in, and, we started doing good. Both stores doing very well. And, he thought, well, let's keep going. Let's get another one. And so store 3 was in Forest, Mississippi, and I'm still in college. So it must have been 2010. And my dad's telling me, like, hey, you should come work with me after college. And I told him, no, like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life.
So 2008 to 2010. So the Great Recession, did that affect y'all?
When the economy pulls back, I think that people change their spending habits, and you might not be so inclined to go eat a steak dinner that costs $100 when you can go to the grocery store and buy a steak and cook it yourself. It might be $50.
So it helped y'all.
So people are more inclined to cook at home than go out to eat, where you obviously know it's more expensive and everything. So we felt like we did very well through the recession. It didn't negatively affect the grocery industry. Mm-hmm. So I know that it was probably tough on some other people in some other industries and stuff like that. But when times are tough, people usually stay home more. Yeah, which is good for selling groceries and everything.
Interesting. So you graduated from USM, and Dad said, "Come on," and you said no.
I was still in college, and my dad told me that we should do this, and I vehemently just told him no. Like, I want to find something that's easier to do, something to make more money. I said, I don't think that this pie is big enough for me and you to split. And
one other thing too, I want your input on this real quick. Because I've dealt with this, and I feel like everybody does, just career burnout. So you've been going from can to can't since you were 18. Do you think that had anything to do with your lack of desire to jump in? Is the fact you're like, hey, I want to change up.
Yeah, I could see that. It was, like I said, candy cane. I mean, it was 5, 6, 7 days a week. Phone, the grocery store is always on. We close one day a year, Christmas, and I can leave my phone on the nightstand on Christmas Day, and usually nobody will call. But any other day, like the stores be open to 9 o'clock. You could get a call at 9 o'clock telling you like, hey, something is wrong, and what do we do? And I feel like I wanted something that, at the time, I just thought like I want something that when 5 o'clock hits, I could punch that clock and it's done. I'll pick it back up at 8.
Right.
And now looking back, I don't think I have that mindset or that mentality. I think I would drive myself crazy from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock the next day of just what can I do?
I made $1,200 or something, I'd just go spend $1,200 on more pipe.
Product, yes.
And so a lot of people weren't doing that. They would just go get the material as needed. And I had a little rental storage in Clinton before I moved back to Madison that I would just stack rolls of pipe, and I would just go buy $2,000 worth of material because I knew how effective and efficient that was to just get that material and run. And say I needed an 80-foot drain done, or I had 20 foot left on the roll, I would keep that scrap and I would just go do jobs with all my leftover material.
Right.
So we were really, really increasing our margins.
That's very smart to do that on the front end whenever you're, the money's not all there on the front end. As you're making it, the majority of people are not going to put hay in the barn anyway, but to not only from a monetary perspective, you're putting hay in the barn and that's smart, but it's the efficiency. Like if you have a laydown yard full of pipe, back to the ninth inning, realtor calls you, boom. It ain't like, hey, let me call Southern Pipe or wherever you're getting it from.
Had it.
It's like, hey, we're headed that way. Just we got it on the yard, and we ain't got to.
We were at that level really, really quick, and so this is like 2009, 10, and then 12. We're buying a new machine, a brand new, ordering a new machine, ordered a new trailer, and every dollar we made, that I didn't have, I reinvested everything. I never paid myself a salary until August the 1st of 2022. Now, through that process, we were just literally just taking some funds and doing some other things for me and my family, like figuring out how to write a truck off and the fuel and starting the LLC in 2012. We were just going. And one of my best friends is an attorney down on the coast, but he was the senior JAG for the state of Mississippi in the Guard. And he poured into me. He would drive up and he'd say, Jason, we're going to eat a steak. And so he would buy my steak every drill weekend, just about for 10 years. He paid for it and wouldn't hardly ever let me pay. And so he pushed me into create my name. He actually named my business, started the LLC, and he would challenge me. He's like, why haven't you done more drains? Why haven't you done this? Why aren't you getting in dirt business? So every part of this process, he kept pushing me like, you keep going. Because I was just like, hey, I'm good. I'm going to be a government employee, and we're just going to do this. But the whole time, my phone's steadily ringing. And my biggest complaint in my career is not being able to take care of everybody just because I can't. And so that bothers me more than anything else. It's kind of like Michael Jordan thinking about the 9,000 shots he missed. And that really is true for me. Through that process, we're going through just the growth of buying more machines. So I start saying, okay, we're going to buy a machine every chance I can. And I only had just a few people in my life that were helping me with this. But I thought if I buy more pieces of equipment, I can get somebody to run it, but then we can grow. And so I would buy a machine, and then I would rent it only to a couple of people I trusted. I'd make money off of that, and then I would continue through that process. Obviously, my good friend taught me, he's like, you need to open up an LLC with equipment rental business and rent it back out to RLDS. And that was a great strategy for me. It's great wealth building because you can buy everything through one LLC, one company, and rents back out to the other company. I learned that at a very young age in this business. And so that was very helpful for me.
Yeah.
And
Man, that's so good you had somebody that put that amount of time in
Yeah.
for, I mean, just to be nice and help you. I
Hey,
mean, to inject like that and buy your steak.
And it was
Goodness.
wild. It was wild. Now I buy every steak we go eat, and he's a very, very good guy, and which has taught me to give back. And
Yes.
I remember I couldn't afford that, and now every time I go out to eat, I love paying for people's meal because that's just me giving
man.
back. And
That's awesome.
And I'm not being boastful or bragging about that, but that's my way of giving back because he did it for me for 10 years,
Yeah.
And
Wow.
anyway, so giving back and serving others, and with this business, it just really started to change. It got expensive. Costs went up, salaries went up. Had to reinvest and buy more equipment. And every time I would buy a piece of equipment, sometimes I was a little nervous, and I had a lot of people you and I know.
Yeah.
They would say, "Yeah, you need to go buy it," and I was a little nervous about it, and it was always tenfold.
We'd find these incidents and spent a lot of time in the field actually looking for problems, and found a lot of bad operators and dealt with some real problems. And I can say to this day, the most rewarding part of my career in the environmental business, which is some 37 years now, was my time at DEQ, because they really saw a turnaround where I helped make a change in the environment, particularly in the oil field in some of those counties. And I'm not trying to knock the oil industry. There was a lot of very good, responsible operators. The majority of them were.
Right.
But there were some awful bad ones too.
Yeah.
And had a lot of dealings with the bad ones, and then had a lot of dealings with illegal disposal of hazardous waste, midnight dumping. Whole truckloads of drums would be dumped with whatever acids and solvents in remote areas. Buried hazardous waste. Was very successful at finding a lot of waste that had been buried in different locations at different businesses around.
So there's actually like an investigative part of that you were having to find.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
a lot. I was dealing with the ATF and FBI on cases at that time. But let me back up. While I was at Southern in 1987, my 6 years was up for my parole, and I got my sentence set aside, my felony conviction. So on April 27th of 87, my felony conviction went away. It was set aside, and so it was nothing along those for that typically goes with the felony conviction were used against me. I could legally purchase firearms, possess firearms at that time.
yeah. Well, that's a big, especially being a hunter like you are. I mean, that's a big deal.
Oh yeah,
That's a big-
it was
Big checkpoint for you.
But I stayed at DEQ until I was there until early 1998. I was married then, had 2 kids, and my wife worked for the health department, and you just no money working for the state of Mississippi. It was tough times. I felt like I'd built a good name for myself at DEQ. Had made a lot of allies out in the business community and in industry. And I said, it's time for me to leave. I don't want to stay on. I want to see what I can do on my own after that. So I went to work for a company, private contractor that did emergency response. And that would have been in 98. And then went through a couple of those, 2 different companies that we did environmental remediation. It's blue collar contracting, emergency response, chemical spills, and so forth. And led up to me becoming the chief operating officer eventually at U.S. Environmental Services, one of the larger response companies in the Gulf South. We had over 1,000 employees, and I worked my way up to chief operating officer there.
Okay, nice. So, all right, you worked up to that, and the last 2 points on your book say fought polluters and started a business. So, What is the polluter part?
That was
Tell me
at
about that.
DEQ. When I was at DEQ,
Okay.
there was some real battles with some
Yeah.
bad polluters. And
Yeah.
some of them had a lot of political stroke, and but I say we prevailed because I really saw a turnaround in some of the areas where we were dealing with some problem folks. But the start of the business, that's referring to one is Malvaney and Associates. I went back to that was my grandfather and father and my uncle's business, architecture and engineering firm. Well, when Deepwater Horizon incident happened with the BP oil spill, I became the liaison on operational issues between BP and the state of Mississippi, where I dealt pretty heavily with Governor Barber and his office, the Department of Marine Resources, DEQ, and other state agencies, and U.S. Environmental Services, where I was COO then. We were their prime contractor in Mississippi. We also had a lot of work going on in Louisiana and in Alabama dealing with the BP spill. But I dealt exclusively with Mississippi, and it turned into a real ride. And I was in a very public role. I would be in public meetings, and Governor Barber would have me in there with him and his staff. Or this happened numerous times. Well, about a month into it, I get a call on my cell phone, we had probably 2,000 people working in Mississippi at that time. And I get a call, and I remember it well. It says, "This is Anita Lee. I'm a reporter with the Sun Herald. We hear you have a very colorful past, and we're going to do a story on you." And that is not what I want. That is not what I wanted to hear at that time. It was neck deep dealing with BP, and did not need a story coming out on that. But I thought about it. I went and sat down with Anita, and she's a very hard-nosed, old school, I call her a gumshoe reporter. And I said, well, I'm going to do this. I don't have anything to hide.
Right.
And she's tough, but I had a couple interviews with her, and I laid everything out. I didn't hold anything back. Very honest with her. And let's say, we'll let the chips fall where they may. Well, right. Then I went to Patrick Sullivan, who at that time was Governor Barber's environmental policy director, and let him know that this is coming, and so he could let others on the staff know. And then I had to let folks at DEQ and DMR know, and then I was dealing with mayors and supervisors, all of them down the coast, virtually every one of them. So I let all of them know and about what was coming and why, the Klan background and everything. I went to all of them, and then waited, and it was a couple weeks later. The newspaper comes out, and I was thinking the old time, said, well, maybe this will be on page 6 down in the bottom or somewhere. But, the online newspapers was just kind of coming out then. But so I stopped, and Anita had told me it was coming out. It looks like it's going to come out tomorrow. So I go to the convenience store, and front page, former Klansman plays leading role in Gulf cleanup on the front page with my picture with in it. So
what year is this?
That was in 2010. And so that's in the middle, the heat of everything going on with the BP spill.
Right.
So it started then.